Your presence is valued and appreciated. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Wendy is recording so that we can share this with folks afterwards, the ones who couldn't make it today. So just to reorient you towards this format, we have a Google slide deck, emailed some links out on Tuesday. So you should have access to this slide deck in your email inbox, also in the chat. But if you would like to follow along on your own screen, you can click on this, and there are links on the first slide. Since city staff can't access the chat features, this is what we're using. The second slide is Q&A, and this is where we really want you to, if you have questions about the process, if you're not comfortable speaking up for some reason, first of all, please speak up. This is a friendly crowd. We are all trying to find our way here, and there is no such thing as a, dumb question. We all know that. So please feel free to use this slide in any way that is helpful. But with that, I'll go ahead and launch into our meeting, our presentation. So today we're going through equitable implementation and accountability. I'll ask Wendy to review the agenda and objectives.
Sure. Okay, good morning. For our agenda today, we'll do our introduction, settling in our ground rules. Then we're going to review the impact maps that we did last week and how we're using the information from those going forward. Go over some key concepts regarding equitable implementation. So what does that entail? What needs to go into our implementation framework? And then we'll have our activity, which will be the majority of our session today. So we're going to try to define our implementation readiness, who some potential partners or connections could be in helping us do this, what some key next steps are for each of our strategies, and then some funding mechanisms, what might be some sources of money that are needed. And then we'll conclude and do our wrap up and next steps. So the objectives today are to start building out our equitable implementation and accountability framework for each of our strategies and subcomponents. So we want to look at the readiness, how ready is that strategy to launch, the equitable next steps that we need to take to get it going, who some potential implementation partners might be, and then funding and financing, as I mentioned. And let's see, in our ground rules, as usual, are respect, be present, everyone participate, no one dominates. And like Don said, please speak up. That's why you're here. You've got an opinion, you've got questions, you've got expertise, and we want to hear it and have you share that with us. Be additive, not repetitive. We're going to go aim for consensus, be open to new ideas, bring solutions to our problems, separate people from problems, speak from your own experience. And then thumbs up or whatever you can on Microsoft Teams to signify agreement. And then we have our enough, let's move on, and we will make space for anyone that needs it. And if anybody has new ones, we'll happily add them.
So I know we go over these every time, and I think it's important to remember that we have a lot of experts in the room. Experts in specific areas and experts in your own lived experience. And so we don't expect everyone to have all the answers to everything, but we really want each of you to jump in and speak up when you have a thought, any idea. This is really a brainstorming activity. And so if just a couple of people are participating and trying to help brainstorm, and they're not saying things that you think they should be saying, that's really what this is. This is an opportunity to get everyone's perspectives involved. It's a brand new process. Traditional city plans are staff creates a plan, we put it out for comment, it gets, torn up and shot down, and then we start over. This is different. So we're kind of doing the painful work up front, really trying to draw out your ideas and getting all of us to think differently. In our little office of sustainability, we are passionate about what we do, and we look at all these other cities for best practices, but we could take some other plan and just stamp Richmond on it, but that's not that's not going to work. That's not going to be effective. This is a community-owned, equity-centered plan. So respect the fact that not everyone, that city staff doesn't have all the answers. Respect the fact that you are representing your own lived experience and you are an expert in your own lived experience. So bring it to the table. This is why you're here. Each of you is special. You have been selected and asked to come to the table and be part of this because you are important. So just want to do a little bit of cheerleading there, and thank you so much for giving us your time. So with that, we are making it through. We're in the creating implementation framework and metrics part of our process timeline. We're getting there. A lot of work has been done. I just cannot thank you enough. It's a long, drawn out process, but we've accomplished a lot, and that's because of each of you. So we're all the way down. We've made it down through prioritizing the strategies just this summer. Prioritizing strategies, identifying the impacts that are going to really make this work actionable. The indicator work that we did last time was really helpful and interesting, and that's going to come back. We're going to revisit that at the end of August. And then now we're starting this implementation piece that I'm going to introduce now. So again, just to kind of show you between the last meeting and this meeting, staff took all of those impacts that you identified and looked at every single output and outcome and fed it into the notes that we're going to be looking at in the activity today so we can think about the next steps. And then all of the impacts, like I said, we'll bring back to identify the indicators to measure accountability and ensure transparency. But now it's time to introduce you to the Equitable Implementation and Accountability Framework. So there are a lot of components to that. We have in green are the implementation elements that we're going to go through today for the strategies. And then in blue are the accountability pieces. And I'll take a minute here to introduce you to the implementation components. So readiness means what activities are already occurring and what might be needed to get the strategy off the ground. And I'll go over these in a little more depth. Equitable next steps means what are the immediate next steps that we can identify to equitably roll out this strategy. It is not our job to come up with, a full-blown implementation plan for every single strategy, but we created those strategies. So let's think about what are some next steps to get it off on the right foot. And then the implementation partners, we're certainly not, pinning anyone, making anyone responsible for this. This is where we identify who we want to ask to be involved. Who we want to make sure that we're including everyone who should be at least asked to be involved. So what are the departments, community organizations, or private entities should be invited to be part of this solution? And then for funding and financing, that's a harder task, but if you have any great ideas, we want to hear them. What does financing look like for this type of strategy? And then in the end, the city steward is something that we'll identify when we figure out which city department is or will be best suited to be responsible for overseeing the implementation of the strategy. So for all of those elements, when we were looking at the strategies, if you'll remember, we rolled a lot of them up into kind of overarching strategies. And so there are these subcomponents that we looked at last month in the impact mapping. And what that's to ensure that we're really actionable with these strategies. We've broken them down. For example, the Municipal Composting Initiative strategy says provide education about and options for composting at city-owned properties and events. The three subcomponents that you guys put under there are conduct organic waste and diversion education and awareness activities, provide options for composting in all city-owned buildings, parks, schools, and facilities, and at city-operated events, Priscilla. And then make compost and mulch available to city properties, residents, and small businesses. So that's a tall order. There's a lot in there. And if we just send this out and say, okay, someone go do that, it's not going to get done. We need to, identify what the starting points are to get that strategy moving in the right and equitable direction. So that's what the kind of structure of the strategies look like at this point. When we talk about readiness of a strategy, it's really what's the appropriate status? Where does it stand right now? Is it already underway? Is there a piece of that that's already happening? Is it ready to go? Maybe all the ducks are in a row. We just need to identify who's going to do it. Where's, how is it getting prioritized, or does it need some funding or something? So ready to go means it's ready to go. Aligned for implementation means that it's already, it's the strategy aligns with and will be implemented through another city plan. So if it's already in Richmond 300, if it's already in a transportation plan, then it's aligned. And it might be a couple of them, but we want to capture that here. If it requires city action, we want to flag that, recognizing that it might require a policy change or some kind of zoning ordinance or council approval. That's what that means. And then, of course, requiring state action is about state level legislation or something that needs to be changed that's a little bit out of our control, but that's what it's going to take to get it going. Any questions about readiness? All right, that one's pretty straightforward. The next steps is a little harder. So what we're doing is identifying 1 to 3 key next steps that we can take to implement the strategy. And we're going to walk through one together, so you'll see what we're getting at. But it's really just the brainstorming, and this isn't, what you say today is not being published. This is really just a brainstorm. What do we think are 1 to 3 key next steps to get the strategy rolling? And then we go back through and ask, okay, well, what are the major equity gaps or disparities that the strategy could address? We've been having this conversation from day one, centering equity in this plan. And I know sometimes it feels redundant, but we have to do it. It's not an afterthought. It's really integral to this plan. So what are those equity gaps and disparities? And then what are your recommendations on how we could then equitably prioritize the rollout of that strategy? So just to remind you, we have the equity screening tool that I believe David put a link to in the chat, and it's also in the email that I sent a couple days ago. It's a Google Doc that you can link to. And that has questions around the 7 community priorities that were identified by our community. This is, again, community-owned, equity-centered. It goes through those 7 priorities that were identified, and it asks the questions that will help us center equity in our strategies. So that's a good tool to refer to during the activity. So I urge you to pull that up. It's a 3-page document. Any question about that? All right. Then the next piece that we'll talk about are the implementation partners. And this is where we're going to think about who needs to be involved in the implementation of the strategy in order for it to be successful. For us to think about not only the decision makers, but the people that will benefit from the success of the action, or the people who might not benefit from the strategy that need to be included, or it's really anyone that should be invited to have a say in the implementation. And then really importantly, what frontline or historically underrepresented community members or organizations should we include? So so that's the implementation partner piece. And again, we're not assigning work to anybody. We're not listing any organizations without, getting their approval or anything. This is really just a first level brainstorm activity. Any questions on that? Okay. So funding and financing mechanisms and pathway maps. This is a tool that is used in climate action plans to identify all the potential ways that we could look to fund our strategies. So, these climate action plans, it would be impossible to fund them solely on tax dollars. It's just not possible. We really have to come up with creative ways to finance all of these great ideas. So this is an example of a couple of our strategies: expand food waste recovery and curbside composting. Maybe we could find some grants, maybe a loan, maybe have a fee for the folks that are going to participate. And then we have some local resources or partners that we've identified. If you know of any, this is the place to kind of throw those out there to put on a brainstorming list. And then some case examples for us to refer back to. We have dozens of strategies and hundreds of subcomponents, really. So there's a lot of information that we need to start capturing and get it down. Like I said, this is a very large think tank going on, and we every one of you has great ideas that we want to start getting down to refer back to. So that's what the funding and financing map is going to look like in the end, and our office is creating this kind of flow chart for every strategy. But there's a lot of work involved and it's really complicated. So if this is the kind of work that you enjoy doing, or you would like to donate some of your time to help us, we are looking for volunteers to help through the end of the year. It's mostly research and, helping us just think through some of the resources and partners and case examples. So please let us know if that's something you're interested in. But in the meantime, today, what we're going to do is just for each strategy, just have a brief conversation with you to see if you do have any ideas, and just to get you thinking. These are the types of funding mechanisms that we've identified with their definitions: different grants, partnerships, loans, bonds, budgets, taxes and fees, or maybe some other special financing arrangements, such as lease purchase, on-bill financing, community shared equity. Maybe you've seen it work somewhere else and it's just an idea that we could look into as an example. So please help us think those things through, because this is a very important part of getting these strategies implemented.
Don Tracy posted in the chat that she'd like to know more about the time agent.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it's as much or as little as you're willing to help with. This is really just looking for some extra brain power to help us set these strategies up for success. So would be really grateful for any and all help.
All right. I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Okay. So yeah, are there any existing local programs that could be aligned with or expanded? Maybe one of you knows of a nonprofit that has something that they're already doing that could be expanded to include one of our strategies if there was some kind of partnership established. Like, this is going to take some really creative thinking, and you guys know what's going on out there, or you know who to ask. And so there's that piece of this too. There'll be plenty of opportunity for you to take these strategies and subcomponents out to your community, your venues, to ask for more input. And like I said, some similar funding examples that you've seen be successful. So that's what that piece looks like. Our activity today is to walk through our strategies and to identify those that brainstorming. And we're going to split up into 3 groups and just see how many we can get through. We're going to do this over this meeting and the next meeting, this meeting and the next meeting. And you know, we're doing this in all 5 pathways this week. We've done it for environment on Monday. We did it for buildings and energy yesterday. This morning is waste. This afternoon is transportation, and tomorrow's the community working group. And what I'm seeing so far is that, you know, we're really grateful for your time. So we don't want to ask you to do a lot between meetings. We're trying to get the work done in this 2-hour session that you've set aside on your calendars. But some people don't really work that way. They would rather take it and do it on their own and have some time to think about it and ask their people for more input. And so we need to talk about what that looks like, but most likely we'll be introducing you to this activity today. If you're the type of person that wants to get all your ideas out in a meeting and not have to think about it again, we want to offer that to you. But I think we'll also then give you access to this document so that you can then go back in on your own over the next couple of meetings and be adding in where you can. So it doesn't need to be a painful process where we're pulling ideas and you're just making stuff up to fill in blanks. That's not what this is about. This is really a brainstorming session to get your ideas down where you have them. So again, we're going to walk through each strategy. We're going to split into 3 breakout groups. It's a spreadsheet that's going to kind of walk us through the 4 components. So you'll be thinking about, for readiness, you know, what activities are already occurring and what is the subcomponent's general readiness for implementation. The second piece of the activity is what are 1 to 3 key next steps, taking equity into consideration for getting the strategy off the ground. The third one is who can assist with implementing this subcomponent and helping to carry out the next steps. And then finally, the financing piece that we just went over. So the activity itself, we are going to walk through one together. I'm going to pull it up on my screen so that you can see it. All right, so this first one is municipal composting initiatives. Provide education about and options for composting at city-owned properties and events. To remind you of the 3 subcomponents that fall under that strategy, we have conduct organic waste and diversion education and awareness activities. And again, this is for municipal, city-owned buildings, city-owned properties. The second subcomponent was provide options for composting in all city-owned buildings, parks, schools, and facilities, and at city-sponsored events. And then the third subcomponent is make compost and mulch available to city properties, residents, and small businesses. So let's just walk through this together in the big group and see what your thoughts are for each of those. Ongoing, ready to go, aligned. Do they require city action? Do they require state action? What do you think?
Okay.
Katrina, conduct organic waste and diversion education and awareness activities. Is that already ongoing?
Somewhat. So we could say ongoing. We do have information on the Clean City Commission site, on the page on the city site, with information and links to composting and stuff like that. But I don't, in general, it's ongoing, specific to city properties, events, etc., then it's probably not quite ready. So I don't know. Yeah.
So if I could chime in, Donna, it could, like Katrina mentioned, it could be enhanced. We have information out there that's not probably not being promoted. It's there, but I wouldn't say that it's, you know, it's not being promoted. It could be promoted better, and and, a little better outreach, I should say.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, perfect, you two. Thank you. So what I saw were 3 key next steps. I saw review the Clean City Commission site for existing information, further develop and enhance and promote information for city properties specifically, and then consider new avenues for promotion. Now, what are the major equity gaps or disparities that this strategy could address? How about something to do with our community centers in neighborhoods that have not maybe heard this information before or haven't been targeted to reach them where they are?
Right.
That's a no.
What?
That was a no. We haven't. It's only thing community center wise that's been done are blah 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 at our community gardens, but that is another opportunity for us to be able to expand the program.
Okay. So
Can
then,
y'all hear me?
Hmm?
So everyone's picked. The internet here is unstable. Everyone's picture disappeared, and then it was really really quiet. I was just making sure.
Oh, no, I got you. Consider community centers in frontline communities, neighborhoods. And then, these are not all the answers. Oh yeah, Tracy, you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say, and it kind of is a sub of number 3 before the consider new avenues for promotion. If the city backs up and requires events, in the permitting process, requires recycling and requires composting, then you can easily partner with those events to have an education component to it. And as the organizer of Broad Appetit, one of the biggest waste producers out there, and we've composted since day one, I would love to partner with the city and talk about composting around, because I've got a whole new plan I'm going to unveil when we can finally get out and party again. So partnering with the events that are already doing composting on a grand scale, and my event Broad Appetit takes place and it's free to the public. So we have a great population of folks that might not hear that. I mean, we're right at the edge of Jackson Ward. We get people from Churchill, from Willow, everywhere. So it's,
That's
it's pretty diverse.
So then how do we equitably prioritize that rollout? How do
Yeah, I'm imagining that it's going to take maybe some city action or even state action, because right now when events, let's say, for example, someone has an event and they have to get a permit, and we include information about recycling and asking them if they want recycling cans, but it's completely and totally optional right now. And so, somebody could just say, nope, I don't want it. So, I think maybe there's going to have to be some kind of city action to require that if you have a city event on city property, or if you want our support in terms of trash or whatever, you also have to provide an option for organic waste disposal. Or if you have food trucks at your event, you have to provide an option for this. Or if you have a beer truck, you have to provide. So I do believe that there's going to need to be some kind of city requirement, because, without saying people have to do it, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Well, so Katrina,
So
I have a question about the executive order, and of course it's around single-use plastics for state agencies and colleges and things, and I wonder how that does trickle down to the municipal level and the conducting of events, because really the city should require recycling at events. I mean, we're at that stage. We're so beyond. If you haven't heard the latest report that isn't even official yet, we are beyond helping ourselves in the plastic war, and we have got to start collecting.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jason was going to say
So
something.
as the person who does that, who does all the permitting for special events and everything, and does all the citywide events, it's one of those things we can barely, as of now, some people wouldn't even use our trash cans because they don't want to put down a deposit. So it's one of those, that would be an uphill battle that we can't at this time would be able to enforce. So that would have to be an ongoing thing, because we can't even enforce that they stay where they're supposed to. And people do things that are so rude and so disrespectful. That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother group. But we, like you said, we offer them the option of using both. We do not offer composting at this time, but we do offer the recycling bins and the trash receptacles. And even with that, it's still an issue, because people don't want to spend the money to get the pieces. So they don't want to spend more money to get more stuff. So again, it's one of those things where it sounds amazing, but the implementation with the staffing we have would be like completely.
Okay.
So
Perfect
with
example.
all
So
of the-
hold
all
on
of
just
the-
a second, because Jason's been trying to say
Oh,
something.
sorry.
You guys, all right. I'll try and keep it brief. So here's what I'm thinking on. This is what I'm like tossing around my head. So we've got like the problem of racism, right? And what happened was like BLM protests, right? And it happened. That's an event for something to change. And what do we want is for something to change. And I'm thinking about the parallels between like large scale protests and what the city does to react to those protests. And it's bringing out all the cops to like police people. And you got to pay those cops. You got to pay for the horses. There's vet bills on the horses. There's all the military style crap that they bring out to the protests. And the city's paying for that, right? So the thing is, with these events that are happening, it shouldn't be about requiring the organizer, unless it's like a multi-million-dollar company, to come up with the recycling cans. It should be the city's responsibility to come up with the recycling and composting things as a given. If there's ever an event, it's required that they have like a big event. It's required that there be porta-johns. Why shouldn't food waste go into a big rubber container as well? And that's just required. I mean,
Okay.
basically it's a reaction.
Yes, so I think that's what we're speaking to, Jason, to say, how do we make that a requirement? To say it now and put it on a piece of paper when somebody applies is one thing, but if they know it's not required, that there needs to be an ordinance or something that says,
right. So
according to ordinance, blah, 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 by city council, if you have this, then you must have. And I think it's a little soft right now.
So it really comes down to the city has to do it, because the city will pay for cops, but will the city pay for people just being people? You know what I mean? Like we're at the point now where like it's still really hard to get people to like think green. You know what I mean? And it's just going to happen. People are going to have events. People are still going to protest things. People are still going to gather in large places. It's just that like the infrastructure has to be there, and the onus shouldn't be on the event organizer. It should be on the city, because events happen and events bring money.
I hear you.
As an event organizer, I feel compelled to speak up, because I own an event management company. I have two hats on when I'm in these meetings. I work at Key Virginia Beautiful, and I own an event management company. So as an event manager, as an organizer, there are a whole host of events that want to do the right thing, have the money to do the right thing, and it should be required. I know that all events are not equal. A protest is completely different than an organized event for a nonprofit. There is a huge difference. I don't know how you guys can separate one from the other, but there is a whole host of people who have a responsibility and have means to pay for it and can do it. Now, the city being able to take care of the things that they have to take care of is a budgetary issue. And this American Rescue Plan cash that's coming down everybody's pike, if you guys aren't fighting for it to come your way to make recycling free to your events, that's what you should be doing. And then having maybe manpower in a department that handles it and then starts tackling how to make composting a thing that is a roll-off that shows up at the events that want it. I mean, let's start off with baby steps. I mean, don't require, just start making it easier and more accessible. As a person who gets sponsorships, sponsorships are going away. I'm going to start looking for grants to do these parts of my events. But that money is out there. And so events need to know about it. It needs to become more and more accessible to smaller events. But as a person who has an event that makes some money, I will pay for these things because it's important. And I know that there are others that feel that way. And we need to use those opportunities to educate.
All right, so you guys are doing an excellent job of filling out this sheet. Torrance, you had a suggestion or something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and I think she just Tracy just hit on it, that I think we're number one, we're talking about a couple of different things. An event, a permitted event that someone requests, I think it should be required. And we have the option for recycling, and we support those events with city funds, and we try to make them as cost neutral to our operations as possible. A protest or something that really is making use of the public right of way without may or may not be planned, it is a lot different. And not that we and we do respond to protests in different ways with a lot of resources, whatever the city or whomever thinks is necessary. But yeah, a planned event, we have support mechanisms in place. What I wanted to say earlier to speak to, if we're talking about how is this strategy equitable, and if we're talking about not just events but to residents, one of the things that I wanted to highlight was that access it may be an equity gap for composting, right? Meaning certain areas or if and access and cost, certain areas or parts of the city may not have access to compost bins. They may not purchase them. They may not, and even if one of our strategies that we're considering is putting drop-off sites for compost. So that could be a transportation access issue. So, and I guess, Don, if you wanna, how can we could make one of the strategies that may fill that gap for access is, a pickup service may be considered for citywide composting. But I know I threw a lot in there. We were talking about events, and then I went to residential, but I wanted to get that in.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect example. I think we're jumping over to residential. This is just municipal, like city buildings and parks, but these were important enough that I wanted to get them down here so we can move stuff around later. But this has been a great conversation and a great example. I want anyone to go back in on this spreadsheet and add in other city departments, organizations, private sectors, equity partners. We didn't necessarily think about equity partners on this. Or community organizations that could be helpful. Any thoughts, Jason?
Mutual Aid, Food Not Bombs, Keep Virginia Cozy, Happily Natural Day, my group, Satanic Richmond. All these groups are happy to jump in to do stuff like that, especially if there's a couple dollars in it for us. But I know right now that Richmond Disaster and Mutual Aid Fund has a ton of money, and people want to put that towards like solid ideas. And I would venture that if I were to call up the person right now who is the treasurer of Mutual Aid, they would sorry, my dogs. They would be very happy to throw some of that money down for like something that is city oriented, or they would be willing to partner with the city to come up with equitable ways to provide composting. Then again, we're getting to residential here, but yeah, there are a ton of groups.
Okay.
people that are already doing the work.
I love it. Perfect, Jason. That was excellent. There's no way I could type fast enough. You had way too many great ideas. So this is just like telling me we definitely have to get this spreadsheet out to you guys to give you some time to put all those great thoughts into it. But what I want to do now is we're going to break into 3 different groups, and on the slide deck, so Priscilla and I are going to be finishing objective 1, going through the municipal operations. And then Wendy and Alexis is here. She's interning with us this summer, so she'll be with Wendy. I'll go ahead and put her name here to go over reduce commercial waste. And then David and Jason are going to be in the reduce residential waste strategies. So it's 9:44. We're going to take a 5-minute break. So go refill your coffee, bio break, whatever you need. Come back and we'll set you into those rooms. But if you have a preference, either call it out and we'll put your name in there, or you can type it in directly to the chart. When you do go into your breakouts, we will come back together. It's going to be 60 minutes to get through as many as you can. And we'll come back together at 10:50. But please, turn cameras on and participate and throw in your ideas, and let's really get as much done as we can in this 1 hour that we have set aside. So with that, go ahead and take a break, and we'll see you back at 9:50.
Hey, come on. Yeah, I'm taking a break right now on this meeting. Hold on a second. I wanted to ask you about this.
Katrina, Don, I just want to let you know, I do have to leave at 10. I would love to stay, but because
Okay.
it's good. And so I don't know if that impacts your breakout sessions, but I will have to leave at 10.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
All right.
Good to know.
If anybody else has a preference, you can shout it out and I'll put it on the spreadsheet or just fill it out yourself. So I know Elle said commercial in the chat. Let's see, Sharon wants municipal, so I'll do that. Okay. Let's see.
Okay, it takes a minute to open these rooms, so I'm going to go ahead and get them started. If you want to come back to the main room at any point, and that's where I'll be, and switch to another room or join me, you're more than welcome. But in the top right corner, be sure you click on Return to Main Meeting, not the red leave button, because that's going to kick you out of the whole meeting. So any questions before we go into our rooms? Or comments?
I don't think I've signed up for a group. Are you going to automatically put me in something? Should I tell you now?
Yeah, I'm going to keep you and Torrance with me since he has to leave soon, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'll go ahead and start the rooms. And like I said, come back and join me in the main room if you have any questions. And otherwise, I'll see you back here in 1 hour.
Thank you.
All right. So I have Priscilla. Oh, Alexis, you should be going with Wendy, but I don't see
It
you.
just kicked me back. I don't know why my breakout rooms never work. Here, let me try.
All right. So
Our breakout room is the main room, right?
Yes. Yeah. So just stay where you are.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Because I was like, I don't see it. But again, Teams acts janky. And like I said, no one's camera, unless everybody's camera's off, it just looks weird.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the first objective. We talked about the first one. Did anyone have any thoughts that you wanted to add to the conduct organic waste and diversion education and awareness activities? The next subcomponent is provide options for composting in all city-owned buildings, parks, schools, and facilities, and at city-sponsored events. I know that there's a lot of overlap in these, but we want to capture your thoughts about readiness for that second subcomponent. Options for composting.
Yeah, I guess that getting back to Tracy's comment about Executive Order 77, which I did put in the chat, is really only state agencies at this time. But so if we wanted to promote composting in schools, that means that they're going to have to switch to compostable food service items. I don't know what if they're using like polystyrene or.
Right, but is that order applicable to, I thought it was.
Right, it's not. Right.
Okay, yeah.
Right, but I'm saying if we're saying one of our targets here is to get composting in schools, then like that just triggers a lot of things, which is kind of what we're doing under the executive order right now. Meaning like what do schools use to serve food? And
Yeah.
Do they
maybe
use dishwashers anymore?
Maybe we could start off with it just being food waste until we can get it to the point where we're also including, because even kids who, even if they're serving lunch on a plastic tray, when the kid eats half the apple, that's going in the trash can along with the, everything else. So maybe if we have a target until we get relevant legislation, we target what we can in terms of, all right, let's just concentrate on food waste right now, because the cafeteria's got waste in pieces. The kids are eating half the lunches. So we provide a bin in all of these facilities, clearly label it, do some intense education, and then just say, right now it's food, and then we work on the rest at a later time or as it comes up.
So part of it's ready to go and part of it would require city action. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes, but the ready to go part of it does have that part of, let's say it's ready to go now, we put these bins in and tell kids put apples in it. the city doesn't necessarily have a way to do it yet. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
where
So
is it
if you
going?
pick up something, if we go to every municipal place and pick up their apple cores and breadcrumbs and stuff like that, we still don't have something in place right now to do something with it. Right.
So I wanted to show y'all something because I think it's perfect. So we do USDA summer meals here, and this is the packaging. Can you see it?
It looks like a plastic bag.
And then yeah, it's sealed plastic bag, and then it has like a hot dog tray inside. And this is the Frosted Flakes and a plum, and then they get a carton of milk, right? So this is the summer breakfast that's being served through RPS, through everybody right now today. This was today's breakfast.
You're muted. I don't hear you. Do y'all hear her?
She was in and then it just went right on out.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's because I told you my internet is janky. It sounds like y'all are in a tunnel. It tells me bad network. Okay, so this is what every kid in the city of Richmond got today. At our parks and our schools, this is what they received. The cardboard is recyclable, the container is not, and then what happens to the fruit is if they don't eat it, they separate it into piles to hopefully get somebody else to eat the fruit later. But that is a great opportunity possibly. But the issue with all of it is without the funding for staffing to be able to do the composting, and that's Torrance's money, it's just really, really hard because now I would have a summer site that fed 200 kids with 100 plums that by tomorrow could be like completely nasty if it isn't something that can do it. Like continuously every day, somebody is picking it up. And a lot of these things are amazing. And I agree. I would love to force everybody to recycle and do those things, but currently we do not have the capacity to afford someone to go to all these sites every day to get the food for composting and things like that. So if it was a centralized thing where certain neighborhoods or whatever, I don't remember how Torrance was expecting it because it's kind of residential and not residential at the same time. It's kind of hard. And until they figure out how to do the Whole Foods containers at schools, and I'm going to tell you now, they're going to say that's not a priority. They're going to
So
say,
I will mention that Kate Rivara, who works with your community gardens there, Priscilla, and
I love Kate.
So Kate is working on a USDA grant, a food waste and composting grant. It's $90,000 over the course of 2 years, so $45,000 a year. And we've had conversations with her about partnering. So we have a site that we've talked about. We've talked about planning in terms of how the city can partner to pick up waste, how we can use community gardens, et cetera, to get these scraps and have a team to come in and turn it and do whatever needs to be done to make it into compost. And fingers crossed we get that grant, but that still goes back to, it'd be great if we had the options to collect these things, but the city does not have anything in place right now to be able to pick it up, take it somewhere, and have somebody. So there could be room under partners, Dawn, I guess, to try to find some community groups that have the capacity to turn some of these things that we try to pick up into compost. I mean, I don't think the city has budget or staff in solid waste. I just think there would be so much of a learning curve in terms of saying, let's train some of our solid waste guys to go down these rows and turn stuff into compost. So I think city solid waste could be involved in helping to pick up and that kind of thing, but we really are going to need some very great community organizations and partners to turn it into compost.
Okay.
Also, I agree. I also think that with that grant possibly being able to purchase, so you know the thing that smushes the trash? Compactor. Not composter, but compactor, because I told you I'm tired. I think that it's an amazing opportunity to purchase some things like that. So in the airport yesterday, all the trash cans were the compacting trash cans, the recycling, and the composting, and it kind of did it all like constantly. So it's smushing the trash down to keep it, but this will be an opportunity maybe at our community centers, at our city buildings, in our parks to offer that. That way, those bigger, units that can do a little bit more. And with that, that'll be that will help us help everyone else. Because again, my kids went to Holton. We had composting at Holton. We did all those things in our garden. So my kids are very aware of it. And when you go to places like Chipotle and things like that, they're in Whole Foods, they give you these options. So I think that earlier on, I said something like early on in these meetings, I was saying, if we can start in the elementary school levels and getting these things kind of in place to move forward, then it'll be an opportunity for us to teach them young. So that way they're aware. So not everybody's a Holton or a Mumford or a Fox where they have these. So how can we get these in our Cardinal Elementary and formerly George Mason? I don't know which name that was.
Exactly
Marsh.
what you're saying. So how can we equitably prioritize this rollout? Like, where do we start? How do we target those equity gaps?
By offering these recycling composting opportunities in elementary schools, especially like starting in schools and then city-owned buildings, which are schools because city owns those too. So starting in city-owned buildings, offering the option to do these things so people will understand that we are trying to move it forward and teaching the narrative on why. So it's literally just looking at the container that they had in the airport, and it told you what goes in here. So I think it's that opportunity to just start with city buildings, including schools, and giving these options of recycling and composting. But buildings, not parks, because parks are harder. So buildings are easier to get these things into simply because you have dedicated maintenance staff just for those buildings in comparison to like a park or city street where Torrance's team has to go out and do it, and they're not there yet. It's a smaller footprint, but it still has a larger impact because we have more people who can do it, observe it.
Okay.
Yeah, manage. Thank you.
So what are some other partners that we could consider?
I don't know. It doesn't really fit under your categories, but I was going to say two things. One is the state, Department of Corrections. They're actually kind of leaders in composting, and they have offered other. They're training inmates on how to do it, because you have the collection part that Priscilla was talking about, but then you have to be able to manage it and then
right. Exactly.
I love it.
And they're actually training people, which is hopefully because we do need this infrastructure across the state, that those folks, when they get out, will have opportunities. But I know they've offered other state agencies to help, and maybe, they have a lot of land, they actually farm, so they could even be the users. They could take compost potentially long term, but so that may be an idea. And the other thing is, we have this, it's called the Waste Diversion and Recycling Task Force that is about to get underway. And so the General Assembly tasked DEQ to staff it, and it's supposed to come up with recommendations on improving the state's composting and recycling infrastructure. So, I think I'm like one of the staffers supporting it, but, we're going to need to hear from like Richmond and from other localities, like, what do you need? And so, I can kind of keep you in the loop. I think they have a report. They're on the hook for a report this fall. So they need to start meeting pretty soon. But, we need like very specific requests, all right, the city's interested, but here are our gaps, and here's where the state might be able to help with either technical assistance or money, or
I love it.
Whatever.
Yeah. And I want to make sure we're differentiating also, because I keep thinking in terms of is our strategy to have these individual buildings to compost, or is our strategy to have these buildings and these departments participate in providing the bones for composting? You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, we could potentially be talking about two different things: picking up food wastes and other things from places and taking it somewhere to be composted, or providing education so that schools can compost. Like you said, the Department of Corrections, they compost on their own. Do we want, you know, facilities and buildings of different types to do their own composting?
So this is a really good point, and I think we have all the right movers and shakers in this little room right now who have a lot of the answers to get this started. So in terms of the first next steps, it is decide that right there, you know. So all that the working group has come up with so far is that we're conducting education and awareness activities. We're providing options for composting, and we're making compost and mulch available. Now, how involved those subcomponents get is up to whoever's going to take this and run with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So, any thoughts on partners or funding for this that I haven't captured?
I think one potential might be, and this just popped into my head, so I have no idea, but what do they call themselves? It's not Mead Westvaco. But anyway, they're headquartered here, I think. They make a lot of compostable food containers. What is it called? It's
West Rock.
What is it?
West Rock.
Yeah, West Rock. Yeah, they merged with somebody else. And they're right downtown.
Is that how you spell
I
it?
had no idea what they did, but they do like to give us money.
Oh, they do? Okay. They have I went in there once when they first moved there, and they have this room, I guess they still do, and they would, to meet with customers, like, what kind of packaging do you need? And then they had like maybe it was an early version of a 3D printer, and they would just like churn out a sample. Okay, how about this? It was really cool.
Wow, that is cool.
But it's all paper-based. You know, they're a forest-based company, so.
That's awesome. Okay. So any other funding or financing, grants? Do you guys know of anything that we want to capture here?
Definitely that USDA food waste grant. I think it is an ongoing, because I think Kate applied for it last year, so it may be an ongoing grant.
Okay.
And I think what Tracy was saying about, you know, all this recovery money, you know, there's a lot that's coming down related to environmental justice and climate change, and food waste is a you know, big contributor to greenhouse gases. So some of it is like yet to be defined, but I guess just kind of keep that on the radar.
Okay.
I know they're just starting to divide it into chunks, and
yeah,
there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money right now.
Great. Okay. So then on this third part, make compost and mulch available to city properties, residents, and small businesses. What are the steps, or first of all, what's the readiness of that? Do we already make compost and mulch available to some? I mean, at least internally we do, right? No?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
No.
so it requires some city action,
Right. Yeah.
What would be the first key next steps?
Trying to figure out where to get the compost from.
Yeah, it's like starting with I think all of our
Well, you
yard
know what?
waste goes to.
I'm sorry, let me correct myself there, because I think there are companies that come, like when we have, you know, we do all that leaf collection and put it in that spot. I think we do have some small businesses that can come and pick up, not necessarily compost, but chipped trees, leaves. So some of the some of the components that can make compost.
And you can, I mean, this is a paid service, but there's some small group. I can see the bin. I can't remember their name, but anyway, you can pay and they'll take, your food waste, and then at some point you get back some compost supposedly. And I think they're using city property. That was because of course I was asking them, do you have a permit for this? Blah, blah, blah.
It's not nope, right?
It's not Nopes. No, it's like food. I'll go look at it and I'll look at the label.
All right. Well, make compost and mulch available to city properties, residents, and small businesses. And I think there's just some education that needs to go on because there is a difference between the two, food
Right.
waste and yard waste. And
Right.
so we're identifying the services and we are researching.
I hate when I don't know if I'm muted. Is there another local municipality that's currently doing that?
There are, so we can look to other cities' best practices, not necessarily in Virginia, but
I think
Yeah.
it's, I heard it was Philadelphia, that Philadelphia
Yeah.
some kind of way has a program that they produce compost and sell or provide to residents and use it for municipal purposes.
In San Francisco.
San Francisco, okay.
And maybe Portland, some Seattle. I would think West Coast cities. Maybe
Yeah.
Arlington. Arlington could be.
And I'm asking because I feel like we are currently trying to reinvent a wheel that's already been invented.
Mhm.
And
that's what I'm
we
saying.
just
All
kinda-
these strategies are being done all over the country in different places. We just need to
figure out who fits
do the
best with us.
research and which ones work for us and which ones don't and all that good stuff.
Right.
Okay, so great. Great ideas. What are the equity gaps on this one though? Making compost and mulch available?
Transportation for some if it's residents.
Like I don't have a pickup truck. So like when we buy mulch, we get it from that place. I know this sounds horrible. I know the name of places, I promise you. But it's like off of Masonic and it's this it's in Henrico and there's this place and we go and we get mulch and we get it by the truckload and it's like $40 for a full truck bed, but it's recycled mulch. Like you have to be careful because it's recycled mulch. Like I believe in Henrico, I don't know how they get it, but they have it and you get it and it's cheap and whatever. But I say that to say it's hugely inconvenient because then I have to get a pickup truck. I have to do this and I have to do that. So then it's kind of like, can you do it like trash and recycling pickup where I can say, hey guys, on April 5th, we're dropping mulch at, if you need mulch, you can get X amount and then the truck drops it off in your alley or wherever the assigned time. So that's the only way to make it equitable is to have a delivery service, a city delivery service that can then do it. Does it make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, so how could we equitably prioritize the rollout?
I think it's tied to, I think it's tied to the education. I really do. I think, people who know about composting and the value and are connected and that's a priority in their lives, or they've made it a priority for whatever reason, are going to take advantage and are going to, be a part. But I think they're underserved and other communities that, the last thing they're thinking about is composting.
Yep.
And we have to educate them on the value of it so that it can become a priority. So I think it's tied to the education.
Okay, great. So then who would potential partners be?
I think PFG should be a partner. I've been pulling that name out a lot lately. In addition, Performance Food Group. They're local. They're a city. the Performance Food Group.
Okay.
They're private
They're-
sector though, right?
Yeah, they are private sector, but I believe they should be, because as much money as the city gives them, and efforts to say that. But so they put out this massive bid. Richmond Public Schools, we do over here for our summer meals and things like that, and the feeding. So it's called, it's not Performance, it's another one. I can't remember, because again, that's kind of, I know the information because I have to deal with it in other ways, but my counterpart is in charge of summer meals, the people who do this. Whatever group we get to do this every summer is getting millions of dollars funded, given back. We pay them and we're reimbursed by the federal government. So in a part of that bidding process, we need to somehow, because again, it's not just us, Parks and Rec, it's RPS, and it's also, and we feed everyone, like daycares, all those things. We need to put in something in there to make them accountable and a part of that. So if that means that a portion of this needs to go into education for future development, or whatever we want to call it, we need to do that. So that's why Performance Food Group should be one of those. I can't think of the name of this group. So the companies that win our grant bid proposals, I don't know how you're going to put that in your box, but they also need to be a partner, because we need to partner with them to make sure that they are doing a part of it. Because again, they're getting millions of dollars in feeding our kids. So how can you give us something back? And that would be a part.
Is it really the RFP process?
Yes.
You're writing procurement, yeah.
Again, my mind isn't fully awakened. And so when I'm saying things, they make sense to me. But if it comes out as blah, 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 know that, charge it to my lack of rest, not my actual thoughts.
Okay, great. All right. Any other organizations or equity partners we might want to consider here?
I think it's probably a long list of community organizations that, touch kids, whether it's community centers, it's churches.
Yeah.
A lot of churches have food banks and feeding programs and kitchens of their own, and they could certainly be a part of, educating and making sure that people know, you can bring your orange peels and other stuff from the house here, and it's going to be turned into compost, and then you can take it and plant flowers in front of your house for beautification or whatever. So I think there could be a lot of community organizations that could touch people to
So
make.
What you just said hit equity for me, because you're right. How do you, in communities where they're not homeowners and they're not homes, how can we make this something that they want? So I think that RRHA needs to be a partner, because basically they can hit you with the whole, hey, we want to make sure our communities, our developments are beautified. And then they could be the partner who gets the housing authority can help with the composting site on site, because there's a lot of composting that could happen over there. So then they could then come back and use that mulch and those things to make the neighborhood beautiful. So yeah, they need to be they need to be partner number one if you want to talk about equity, because again, I don't see Sarah Lou, who lives in Gilpin, going, hey, I want to compost.
Right.
Flowers
exactly. That's the equity part of it right there. It's like, what in the world am I doing this for? So I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Even if there's a bin provided, or even if somebody comes through, there's no value to me, to do it. So I think that's why I said it's tied to that whole education thing, and making sure people understand this whole cycle could result in a benefit to you.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you. Perfect.
What about
funding and
what about the
financing? Is it all the same?
YMCA? They seem, maybe that would fall under community centers, but I know they do.
But that goes, the YMCA isn't, so if we're talking about equability, again, if we're talking about being equitable, the YMCA would not be a part of it, because the people who use the Y already, most of them are not in these neighborhoods. Like the North Side Y is, it has no Black people who are of any level of the 5 social determinants. they don't have those issues. They're people like me. My kids have memberships there, but I can afford to do these things. I have a composter in my yard. I have a city compost in my yard. All that stuff is in there. I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do with it now. Excuse my language, but I really don't. I don't even know why I'm composting because I'm not touching it and I'm not opening it anymore. But I say that to say the people who attend the Y aren't necessarily the ones who we need to be reaching. The ones that are my community centers, yes. If we had compost bins at football games on Saturdays, and then on Saturday evening, Sunday morning, someone picked it up and took it somewhere to get composted, great. And let's teach the people there, let's have those conversations. But the kids who are playing soccer at Bryant Park, they don't need compost information because their parents have composting bins and probably have already figured it out.
Okay, excellent. Are we good? Any other funding, financing? We're covered. Grants, partnerships.
Municipal budgeting for that also is going to be important in terms of funding because we will have to, again, transport, work out some kind of program on, who gets it, when they get, that kind of thing. So it definitely needs to be some municipal budgeting.
Okay. All right, y'all did a great job with this one. Let's jump to municipal zero waste. Demonstrate high impact zero waste practices through a commitment to meeting standards set forth by Executive Order 77. And this has a whole bunch of subcomponents. Align city operations with the order, track and visibly promote large-scale climate neutrality efforts, implement strategies that incentivize behavior change among city employees, such as elimination of desk side trash bins, removal of single-use plastics and styrofoam, and regular waste minimization and sustainability trainings. Seek cost-effective best practices among institutional partners and identify opportunities for collaborations to minimize waste. Conduct an internal waste audit to access waste streams and their recovery, recycling, and disposal. Now, the interesting thing I'm seeing when I read those is that a lot of the next steps are in there. That we've really broken this one down to identify all the different ways to start working on zero waste. And even at the impact mapping activities, someone said implement a green purchasing policy. Absolutely, that's the great key next step. House Bill 533 says prohibits the dispensing by a food vendor of prepared food to a customer in a single-use expanded polystyrene food service container. Sharon, can you tell me if that is relevant here?
Yeah, it's actually being phased in, so it's by the size of like the business number, the number of establishments they have across the state. So I think if you have 20 or more, it goes into effect maybe 2023, and then it's all the others maybe 2025. But,
yeah, how do you mix it up?
Probably implement green purchasing policy, right? We'll draft.
Yeah, I mean, the city could be ahead of that. That's just to give those businesses time to find alternatives and so forth.
So we could refer to it though. We could use that. Okay. And then pass a zero waste policy that reduces the total number of waste generated by city buildings and through city activities. That would be harder, but I think so. A lot of this is city action, right? We're not quite align city operations. Well, I think we're ready to go. Well, we're ready to go, but it's going to take city action. How's that? Track and visibly promote large-scale climate neutrality efforts. That's going to need some work. I don't even know what that looks like. What are 1 to 3 key next steps there? Just using examples. Maybe we come back to that one. Okay, so zero waste policy, see cost-effective best practices. This is like learning from our neighbors. So Sharon, again, this HB 1354 creates Plastic Waste Prevention Advisory Council. Is that something that would be helpful here?
Yes, so actually I am on that council because our director, delegated me as alternate, but that is supposed to be looking at ways to reduce the impact of plastics in the environment. And so they have already had one meeting. They have to come up with a report by November. It'll probably be, they might recommend some additional legislation or policy changes.
And then conduct an internal waste audit to verify equitable waste collection infrastructure and available resources that exist across Richmond, focusing on frontline communities. I'm not sure how that came up in May during the working group. It was some feedback someone gave us. I'm not sure what that means, actually. But let's get back to the top. So, in terms of readiness, implement strategies that incentivize behavior change among city employees. Katrina, you're going to know better, and Priscilla too, working in city buildings. Like, what is that ongoing? Is it ready to go? Is it aligned with something else that's already?
That's gonna have, I don't think it's ready to go. I think it's gonna have to be on, I mean, I don't think it's ongoing. I think there are efforts within the city to, make recycle bins available, in offices and stuff like that. But incentivizing, definitely not.
So let's say it's
So-
ongoing, but it needs work.
Needs work, yeah.
That sounds better.
What would be a next step to get that going?
So we do this thing, is it yearly? I don't know, where it's this thing where we have to do about water and waste and what is it? Like, it's this training we have to take every year that does something about the things on the street where the water goes into. Told you, my mind is not working right now. Do y'all know what I'm talking about?
You've given us your best.
Wastewater. There's this wastewater training that we do every year. So like, don't put oil down the drain. Don't do this. I think that what would need to happen for city agencies is that mandatory training on a recycling, composting, whatever we want to do it. And until that goes in effect, and so that would be step one, to implement that. And then you have a certificate. That means it acknowledges that every city employee has now seen XYZ.
I like it.
Then you can start implementing it. But I think you would implement it, like put the resources in and then do that training. But it's one of, again, the stormwater training is something like we do every year without fail. And then by going through HR and making sure it's in the training programs, that way we can then say, hey, we are now doing this, and then it would become ongoing. But right now, because we are not I'm not in City Hall. I am not in, the community, Southside community, those official city buildings. Our building is an offset that we rent on Admiral Street. And with that, though, we don't have to follow city guidelines in regards to city building things because the city doesn't own the building. So those are those offsets. So we can then, after that training, then we can be held accountable. So like we have recycling here and we work really hard to recycle, but we literally have the same recycling bin that I have at the house. And the recycling pickup here is the same day that recycling pickup is at my house. I live around the corner, so that's not a big deal. But again, it's nothing that is new or changed than anything else. This is the same type of stuff. So it's nothing different or implemented more.
Okay,
So
I like it.
Yeah, I think we also need a team or a captain or You know, when I was at Capital One, they had a person who was a floor warden, and that was the person that, you know, if a storm came, knew to tell people to go this way or get on the ground or climb under a desk or whatever. So I think we need some kind of floor warden or team captain per per building, and even maybe down to per division or per department, to say, all right, here's what our building is looking like, and this is the, you know, because it's going to be different each building also, you know, some
Yep.
buildings do more paper and some have more lunch containers or whatever. And so they can kind of look at the status of their particular building, who's in the building, and then what are the strategies, how can we be better at changing our behavior to eliminate or to contribute toward, you know, being more sustainable or more responsible as it relates to recycling.
I like that a lot. And so now I'm thinking, okay, we get all this in place, we get our team, we get our trainings, we create our policy, maybe some administrative regulations, whatever. Then we can track and visibly promote these efforts that we're doing. But what does that look like? What would be some next steps to get that going?
Well, I was going to suggest that Richmond, I was just going to try to find the link. I don't think Richmond is part of the Environmental Excellence Program Sustainability Partners. A number of other cities are, and I'll get you the link in a minute. But so DEQ, so we have this whole environmental management system, you know, incentive program, recognition program, and we have a number of cities and counties who are part of it. DEQ is part of it. So we have an EMS team, going back to your, you know, team concept, and we track, I mean, it's beyond waste. So it's water, it's, you know, energy, it's waste. And there is a mandatory training every year. And we've worked with our training staff, and they made it, it's like, we have to do all, you know, conflict of interest, all these other ones that are super boring and like really like, oh God, I have to do that again. The EMS one is so cute, and like, it's like a refreshing change, and it takes like 5 minutes or something, but it just reminds people about, you know, what our priorities are and trying to reduce our overall footprint. And, you know, we'd be happy to share that with you. But so if you joined, you know, Sustainability Partners, there are some annual reporting, some metrics.
Okay, great.
And then in terms of tracking, you know, maybe we could have a city or a department container, and we track. I mean, we keep track each week or something of, let's say, you know, look at all these guys who are working in grounds and solid waste, who are drinking water bottle after water bottle because it's so hot outside and they have to work, you know, in the heat. So at the end of the day, maybe they bring all their water bottles in, and there's a smiley face at the top once they get to X number of water bottles. So
okay.
You know, it's kind of an incentive and a tracking, you know, just to show things that we're doing to to reduce.
Yeah, I like that.
When I gave everybody the water bottles here, everyone was very excited. So I think that my division is excited about these things, but again, until it's but that's this building. So now we have guys over in our parks building, we have people at the pool, so, and they're using those little throwaway plastic cups again. But again, I agree.
So what are the equity gaps that this strategy could address? Municipal zero waste.
Well, I think if you know, if one of the strategies is to promote reusable water bottles, you know, having access to cold water to refill your bottle, it's, you know, I know the city has put them in those bottle refilling stations in the parks, but I don't know if it's across the board. Those are great, especially the ones with the dog one, like the three level one. So it's a drinking fountain, a water bottle, and then the dog one. But I don't, you know, those are, even if it's just in the parks, they could be elsewhere too. I mean, people get thirsty at other places. So
Okay.
there's a program that I think some cities are and universities are adopting called Take Back the Tap, to remind people that tap water is actually really good. I mean, the city of Richmond touts it, the quality of its drinking water, but for some reason people have been trained like, oh no, I need this water out of a bottle, which might be coming from someone else's tap.
Yeah.
But it's
Right.
So
I agree with that completely. And we have stations. I mean, when I first started working here in this building on Commerce, and I brought my water container in, and we have these stations where you can get water, and everybody was like, I wouldn't drink that water. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? That's why it's here, for us to save on, you know, drinking a lot of water bottles. We bring our container in and we fill it in. So there does need to be that education in terms of, you know, this is perfectly good water. Don't, you know, turn your nose up at it.
Okay, well, these are great. Any equity? Oh, before I jump to partners, on the institutional best practices, this one is, Ryan brought this up a few months ago, saying that there are so many big institutions, like that's where so much waste comes from, these big agencies and hospitals and universities. So how can we seek cost-effective best practices from them and identify opportunities for collaborations? Do you have any ideas on that?
Well, so just I'll tell you from the EO77 work, we have been getting requests like that a lot because agencies have to come up with acceptable alternatives, and we've been cautioning them about just going out, you know, on the open market and finding green products, because a lot of them are not really green. And so we've been saying we need to work collaboratively with our Department of General Services and make sure that these claims are accurate. So one of the things we're trying to do is create an online forum, and just, it's like, you know, it doesn't usually happen like this, but we might actually have this new tool that would work perfectly for this. So we're like looking at a demo. It's called Bang the Table, and it's supposed to be for like community participation. And anyway, that's going to be something that we will probably have like a state agency component to it, but then we also will want to have vendors be able to participate, but maybe we could expand it beyond that to, you know, just interested cities, town, or in individuals.
I love it. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's some kind of, I mean, can we research awards? I mean, can we just go somewhere and there's some kind of database of what company has won best practices in, you know, saving water or something, and then we reach out to them. So can we locate, or does anybody know of a central spot?
What about Tom Griffin and Virginia Green? Would that be a place to start?
Might be, yeah.
I mean, we've also done case studies on the Governor's Awards winners.
Mm-hmm.
And we're hoping to do case studies, you know, out of the executive order too.
Mm-hmm.
So there, I'll have to look. I know we have some case studies. There we go.
Okay, so then how about, again, I'd love more equitable rollout, but this is city buildings. So I think we just need to keep remembering, you know, I guess if you guys have thoughts on how to make these city strategies equitable, we're having trouble. Yesterday, buildings and energy was tough too. It's like, okay, we can start in libraries, we can start in community centers in, you know, underserved neighborhoods, but other than that, what are we missing in terms of equity? How about partners on this one? you've been throwing some out, certainly, DEQ,
Mhm.
waste, purchasing.
Right, yeah.
Oh, wrong one.
Private sector, I mean, we've got Capital One, we've got Altria, we've got, some big companies here in the area that may have,
So here's one I think we should push on. Diamond Springs. Diamond Springs is our water bottle people, our water cooler people. They should definitely be helping us with that.
mhm.
So I heard under the best practices, partners could be DEQ and Virginia Green. I think probably U of R and VCU. Any other thoughts? Okay, how about funding and financing this municipal zero waste? Any creative ideas?
Yeah, other than municipal budgeting, I don't know if there's any other funding out there in terms of. Any of these.
All right. If we think of any good examples of other localities that are doing it well, or sponsorships, partnerships, I think Priscilla's coming up with some good ones that, related to the food packaging and water bottles.
I'm in a meeting.
All right, so then the third, we just have a few more minutes. Let's jump. Oh, it looks like great. Y'all are doing awesome. Let's go to objective 4 and just see if we can do any of these. This is the industrial waste advocacy and environmental justice. So protect communities from industrial waste through legislative advocacy and more stringent requirements for industrial waste producers, disposal, tracking, and siting. So those subcomponents are things like implement measures to identify the potential impacts of new facilities on neighboring communities, advocate for state and regional policies that reduce industrial waste from facilities in frontline communities and those in floodplains or flood-prone areas, incentivize waste reduction programs and manufacturing processes that minimize greenhouse gas emissions, and require external and transparent industrial waste audits with findings published to identify potential impacts on the surrounding community. We had some notes from the impact mapping and working groups about how we can implement some of this, but what do you think about readiness of those 4 subcomponents? Implement measures to identify the potential impacts of new facilities. I think that's going to require some city action.
Mm-hmm. Or
What?
maybe state action.
What do you think, Sharon?
Well, I think this is interesting because I sat through, I think, 20 strategic planning sessions over the last few weeks, and environmental justice is a big part of those conversations. And so many of what our programs are saying are these facilities are being located based on local zoning decisions. And by the time they reach DEQ, we're just basically saying, do they meet the regulatory requirements? And so a lot of the strategies have been, we need to have better, our process needs to be better integrated with local zoning decisions, and as well as economic development. You know, like a lot of those big new, and hooray, there's these big announcements. They're all done in secret, and then it's like, oh, this new facility is going here, and you know, without regard to wetlands or whatever, or local communities. So it's interesting because basically we have the same goal. So one thing you might just want to say, so we have a new environmental justice coordinator, and you know, maybe she's trying to gather, she's trying to, you know, she's new to Virginia, she's trying to reach out and meet people and discuss their issues. So maybe she would be a resource. So her name is Renee Hoyos, Hoyos.
Great. All right. Implement measures to identify the potential impacts of new facilities. Something about economic development and site plan, right? Like there need to be some measures in place.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really know anything about the city planning process, other than I know I was on my neighborhood's land use and zoning committee. And so when there is a special use permit, you know, this committee, I've been on it for like 5 years. A lot of times the questions are like, where are the trash cans going to go? And like, it's really, really localized. And I keep saying, we need to be thinking of these things in the context of the city's new master plan and the city's climate action plan. I mean, and most of these are like infill development, not a big, you know, manufacturing plant, but I feel like there's a gap in the analysis, and you know, the planning departments, again, they're just reviewing it to, does it meet these requirements? So the big picture sometimes I think gets lost.
Yeah, that's excellent. And in that case, it is aligned. It just needs some more work, because Richmond 300, like I'm on this planning and development review team. So every single special use permit, there's like this big list of people that get included if they have any comments on it. But actually figuring out what those questions are is kind of.
Let me tell you this. You need to figure it out in the next 20 minutes, because I've redone the form and it's going live at noon. Like, sorry. Special permits are like that's this big knot right here. This one is about special events permits in the city of Richmond. And this knot right here is about community centers and staffing. So yeah, 20 minutes. Like I just sent another email going, did you guys get the test? We moved to form stat, which makes it a lot easier. Okay, I'll shut up now.
No, that's great. It's like identifying those questions, not just the protocols, but like what are the questions we want to ask, you know? There's just some protocols.
Right.
The bonus is, because I removed it from DIT's hands, because if you've ever gone through and submitted one of those permits, it's a DIT application they've created, and like you hit enter and everyone thinks it's not going through, so it'll send us 40 emails. But with that, they don't change it because they don't have the thing. So literally now with FormStack, which they approved.
Okay. So what are the major equity gaps in this one?
The equity gaps are that no one wants to pay for it because they don't, that the city should give them everything for free. But with that, it's kind of the fact that if you aren't knowledgeable of the information that you need, then you won't know to ask. So do you need trash cans for your event? Yeah. But are you aware that, you know, how many people are you having? That should indicate how many trash cans you're having, not I only want to pay for, because the deposit's like $250. Because again, these trash cans walk off, and I understand that, but kind of like the porta potty rules, right? If you have this many people in attendance during this many hours, then that means you need this many porta potties, and it kind of should be the same with trash.
So how can we equitably prioritize the rollout?
That's a great question that I don't know.
Jason,
Hi.
how are you? Okay. Yeah, I think others are going to start joining us. Oh, hey, Jason. You're on mute.
Hey,
How's it going?
regular yourself?
Good. We finished objective 1, so we were jumping to 4. So, David and Jason, did you have anyone else in your group?
We had Tyla, but she was having a little bit of trouble with her user interface. So I think she has to hang up and call back.
Okay. So did you get through?
We got through all but one of our subcomponents. Yeah.
Great. Great. We got through ours, and we were just starting on objective 4. So, how about, is Wendy back? Elle, were you with Wendy and Tracy? How'd that group go?
Great.
We're coming.
Yeah, we had good times.
Oh, good. This is heartwarming to hear. Okay, well, we're back, and thank you for all of that work that you did, all that good thinking and collaboration. Anyone want to share any feedback, thoughts?
I just came back to we got to smash capitalism again.
We got to creatively figure out how to turn it to, to our advantage, right?
Right. I kept saying stuff like, city needs to subsidize me.
Well, we don't have a huge tax base, so I think we're gonna have some trouble if we're gonna rely on that. But...
Oh, I was throwing out that we need to start making Kroger more responsible for the amount of banana peels that they leave us with. And I want to bring up the fact that I mentioned this in our group, like Kroger is like 10 times richer than Monsanto, now owned by Bayer. So when you buy aspirin, you're subsidizing Roundup.
But what happens if we give them all these new requirements and then they leave and go somewhere else where it's easier?
Is Kroger really gonna leave and go somewhere else?
Right. It's cheaper, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. We gotta be careful about some of this.
Well, so I also the word I was thinking was negotiate. It's going to be a big negotiator. The fact is, they bring in all the food, and then we eat parts of the food, and then we get rid of the food. So why shouldn't they be responsible for helping move some of that waste out of landfills?
Yeah, partner, come up with some really creative partners.
Line the incentives.
Yeah, great ideas. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, our next meeting is going to be Thursday, August 5th. We're going to go through these and finish these up. I think we made a lot of progress today. So thank you for giving us all of your attention. There is going to be a new meeting on Thursday, August 26th, and that's when we'll go through the accountability and transparency pieces. And like I said, we're getting there. We're making a ton of progress. So thank you so much for being part of this solution here, part of this planning process. There is a survey again. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share with us, you can put them in that. It is anonymous. So if you just want to tell us what you really think, go for it. If you want to ask a question or use that Q&A slide in the slide deck for any reason, That's a great place for, we check all these places for your feedback and comments and questions. There is a survey that's going to come out tomorrow. Kendra Norell, our community engagement coordinator, is going to be sending out a link for you to fill out. It's going to all of our stakeholder groups. David, did you want to say anything else about that?
Yeah, so that's just something Kendra will send. It's in response to some of the communications consultants and equity consultants that we've been working with, and just to help prepare us for further engagement when the plan is all put together. So it'll just be asking questions about partnership opportunities, capacity to connect with your own communities, things like that. So I know it'll be a big help for Kendra as she's planning for the next few months.
Excellent, thank you. And along those lines, Jason had a great idea before the meeting started when I was kind of letting him know as one of our co-chairs what this was going to be all about. He suggested if there's a way for you guys to take this out to your people or your organizations or your friend groups or your neighbors or whoever you have access to and get some more input, we might get even better results. So this is definitely, we want everyone involved in this. So if you do, feel free to take these questions out and share the information back with us. And we'll be thinking about how to get this in a format that's easier for you to work with.
Exactly that. Could you guys do that? Like on a piece of paper that I could like cut in half so it's on like 2 pieces of paper. So I have 2 on 1. Like with just a couple of these questions or a couple of the hardest parts that we're wondering about just for us and our friends. That would be killer.
All right, Wendy and David, I hope that and Alexis, I hope your brains are churning. So, and if anyone has any other thoughts on that, please let us know. We'll see what we can come up with, but I think that's a great idea. All right, well, with that, any updates or upcoming events or information you want to share, the floor is yours. Otherwise, I'll stick around if you want to stay on and ask questions, or you're free to go.
Thank you. See ya.
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.
Plant a tree. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.